Hello, this is Josh Daskin here to talk about my recent paper in the Journal of Ecology regarding ecological legacies of Civil War. Globally, large herbivores are threatened by a range of processes including poaching, interaction with domestic animals, habitat loss, and civil conflict. In Africa, populations of the continent's iconic large herbivores, elephant, zebra, buffalo, and many antelope species, have declined by about one-half since the 1970s. We might ask what the effects of such declines are on savanna habitats. For example, removing large mammalian herbivores may affect the amount of tree cover in savannas, which is a critical determinant of species distribution and abundance, and of biogeochemical processes. Experiments like the one illustrated here from Kruger National Park show that the removal of large mammalian herbivores from a savanna, here shown in the area on the left, can increase tree cover relative to the areas where herbivores still have access. In a separate experiment, also from South Africa, trees grew faster in areas where all large mammalian herbivores were excluded, shown in the right bar, relative to plots where large mammalian herbivores had access, and to areas without rhinoceros. The same experiment showed an interesting interaction, though, where fires eliminated the effect of large mammalian herbivores. In fact, theory does predict complex interactions between different groups of large mammalian herbivores depending on their diet, fire, and trees. Grazers, which eat primarily grass and which are represented here by zebra and buffalo, have an indirect positive effect on trees, represented by the dashed line, by eating grass, which would otherwise compete with trees. Removing grass also reduces the likelihood of fire consuming woody vegetation. Browsers, on the other hand, represented here by elephant, but also including several species of antelope in African savannas, consume woody vegetation directly, therefore having a negative impact on trees. Thus, it's unclear what to expect in a real ecosystem where large mammalian herbivores decline, given varied fire, soil, water, human disturbances, and interspecific interactions and potential compensation by one herbivore species when others decline. I took advantage of a particularly intensive instance of large mammalian herbivore declines, that in Gorongosa National Park, Mozambique, to test how the removal of both large browsers and large grazers would affect tree cover in an African savanna. In Gorongosa, greater than 95% of all large mammalian herbivore individuals were removed during poaching associated with the 1977 to 1992 Civil War, and biomass of large herbivores remained low for several years thereafter. As shown here based on data from both pre-war surveys in the black bars from 1968 to 1972, and several post-war surveys beginning in 1994, basically all large herbivore species declined extremely strongly during the Civil War. Elephants, which is a browser, as well as hippo, buffalo, zebra, waterbuck, and wildebeest, all grazers, all declined strongly and had their populations remain quite low for several decades. I compared supervised classifications of satellite imagery from a commercial product recorded in 2012 with declassified satellite imagery from the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency's Cold War surveillance program recorded in 1977 at the onset of the Civil War to find where habitats had changed from herbaceous to woody-dominated vegetation, here shown in green, or the opposite, from woody vegetation to herbaceous, shown in orange. Overall, as shown in the right plot, there was a 34% increase in tree cover park-wide, suggesting that browser declines had a stronger effect than grazer declines. This result is in line with experiments which have found higher tree cover where all large herbivores are excluded, but is perhaps still surprising for a system that was so heavily dominated numerically and in terms of biomass by grazers before the war. Briefly, because an increase in rainfall and/or a reduction in fire frequency over the time span of our study could have led to the observed increase in tree cover, we also investigated historical trends in these variables. There was no apparent trend in modeled annual rainfall data. For fire, the modest burned area product, available for the years 2000 to 2012, shows that nearly one-half of Gorongosa burns annually, which is quite high for a savanna. To infer the pre-2000 fire regime, we inspected historical human population estimates for the region and found that they did not approach the 10 people per kilometer squared level at which fire extent declines in southern African savannas, shown in the red line. Thus, neither increased rainfall nor reduced fire frequency is likely to explain the increase in tree cover. Moreover, if we inspect the spatial distribution of large mammalian herbivores in Gorongosa before the war, as shown in this 1969 map which shows herd locations and their sizes, as indicated by dot size, we see that animals clustered within certain regions of the park, especially the central Lake Urema floodplain and the surrounding alluvial fan savanna. Further support for the browser release hypothesis is apparent if we plot the habitat-specific herbivore density against the corresponding percentage of tree cover increase. In summary, we demonstrated that the effects of browser declines, increased tree cover, trump the potential effects of grazer declines, decreased tree cover, even in a heavily burned savanna where grazer removal could have increased grassy fuels for fire, which consume woody vegetation. The results indicate that ongoing woody encroachment in African savannas, due to a combination of overgrazing by domestic livestock and to fire suppression, could be exacerbated by simultaneous large mammalian herbivore declines. I'd like to thank the many people and places who made this work possible, in particular the funders shown across the bottom, the British Ecological Society for inviting this presentation, and my co-authors Rob Pringle and Mark Stallmans for their input on this work.